Traveling transrational blues.
Labor and the expression of worth. There will be people who say, I love you, who do not mean it. Usually it's not because they do not mean it, but because they cannot mean it. I can speak with great authority on these matters because I know what it is like from both sides. It's the human condition. Generally speaking, we hardly have any idea what love is, and people are so scared that they can hardly tell the truth to themselves. For many good reasons, most of us cannot even afford to be honest with ourselves. Those same people who could not love you, they are embedded manifestations of your victimization. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's very difficult to escape from this self-constructed prison. The way out is to take full responsibility for everything you've ever seen or experienced, responsibility for your response to what you've seen and experienced, and also remember that you were born into this situation, or so it seems. There's a real grace in that idea that we were born into this. We accept our ancestors. We accept our descendants as we accept ourselves. We're all in this together. Always remember, we honor our ancestors by freeing ourselves from the bondage into which we were born. Sometimes we're told that we honor our families of origin by staying quiet about the difficult things. That's not true. If telling your story causes other people to feel uncomfortable, that's okay. What other people think about you is none of your business. That's freedom. Sometimes family members will want you to stay quiet. This is because they have yet to acknowledge the part they played. Shame silences. I've seen it. Na 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 na. Na 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 na, yeah. Hey. You see, shame is strengthened by secrecy. People who lied to you when they said I love you do not want their own shame to be revealed. This is one way that shame is perpetuated in nuclear families. Family secrets, generational curses, epigenetic trauma. We may consider the artistic telling of our stories to be freedom compositions. Freedom compositions, the artistic creations that emerge as a manifestation of our surrender to the sacred nature of being. You see, there is no shame in the sacred nature of being. At our very core, the I am, that isness, the suchness, the one love, our true nature, that seed of stillness and love at our very core. There are at least a couple of ways to define a myth. One way is that it is a falsity, lies, the lies that we tell ourselves, the lies we were born into, narratives and metaphysical constructs which create fear and control. But wait, here's another way to think about a myth. A myth is a transcendent truth. Ralph Waldo Emerson says that fiction reveals truth that reality obscures. Christ was a subversive storyteller, a parable teller. He spoke in stories because no one could understand. We are symbolic language primates. Freedom compositions are, by their very nature, subversive. We become subversive storytellers. Do not be surprised when people are upset by your stories, because there are fear, control, shame systems in place all around us. And we must rise above those. We must find our deeper selves. And this is the story of the Christ, the one who showed up as the one we call Jesus, who is probably called something more like Yeshua. I understand it to be an important point as far as names that are above all names go, names that are beyond all names. And that is exactly what we're getting at. That is subversive in itself. More of us are playing victim than most of us would like to admit. Seeing through these lies that are embedded in our families and cultures is a really big deal. A lot of us, as adults, have been feeling our way through this for many, many years now. You know if you're one. We are the ones who have been digging through layer after layer after layer, it seems, just up to the shadow work in deep and intense ways, just because it seems like we have to. We've been undoing these myths, these falsities, these metaphysical constructs that are not helping us as an individual or as a people. We must learn to tell ourselves the tales that set us free. And by our very nature, by our very freedom nature, we are not attached to any one story. We are not attached to any one story specifically, just as Jesus showed us how to get over ourselves. As Jesus was trying to help us to understand that there was no religion to join. He was trying to help us to understand that we are one with that sacred nature of being. He understood himself to be one with the sacred nature of being, and this is why we remember him. He is the one who came saying, "You are not separate from God. You are not separate from one another." This is good news, my friends. And also, the one we call Jesus, he said, unless you hate your mother and father, brother and sister, child and your wife, unless you hate even your own life, he said, you're not really up for my teachings. There are some of us who have been exhausted by this whole experience. We understand very clearly what it means to hate our own lives. And so there is an extreme expression of surrender that comes for us. And for many of us, it is our job to help you to understand. There is nothing personal in all of this. In fact, love is not personal. That's the whole point of getting over ourselves. When we are instructed to love our enemies, to pray for those who hurt us, we're going to keep loving and giving and being generous, not because we are naive, but because this is who we know ourselves to be. We give freely. And we also have understood now how to have strong boundaries so that we can help those who are still caught in those great lies, those of us who are still saying, "I love you," when we are really putting people in bondage with those very words. It also may be helpful to understand that sometimes what we call forgiveness is not forgiveness at all. Sometimes what we call forgiveness is us returning to the people who have hurt us over and over again. Here's what it was like for me. I was into my middle age before I realized that I was not obligated to return over and over again to relationships that required me to be weak and sick. Why, you might ask, would anyone ever do that? That is a really good question. Here's the short answer that I've come up with over many years. Sometimes we're told that shame is love, and love is shame. And that, my friend, is a serious mind fuck. This is not just something I've seen in my family of origin. This is something that's going on in our world on a large scale. Now that I have learned to see this in my own life, I see it all over the place. So many of you are engaged in this kind of activity. It's actually the culture that we inherited, the entitlement culture that could be traced all the way back to the first pyramid schemes. civilization sometimes is called the fall in metaphor. Or you could just go back to 1492 when Europeans came to the Americas and, when Europeans came to the Americas with a great sense of entitlement. And we move forward to manifest destiny when another group of Europeans came over and swept across North America. These are just symbols now. They're not accusations. They're just ways that we can understand who we are and the people that we have become and the people that we've hurt. And it's appropriate for your heart to be broken over what you see.